Most people think that to make $850,000 a year, you need to be working 80-hour weeks, sacrifice family time, and basically sell your soul to the grind. I'm living proof that that's completely wrong. I own 7 businesses that generate over $850,000 a year in profit, and I only work a few hours a day to make sure that continues on. I'm not special, I'm not a genius, I just understand leverage. Today I'm going to pull back the curtain and show you exactly how I built this portfolio, the management systems that I use, and most importantly, how I get to be there when my kids come home from school every day at 3 p.m. Let me go grab the whiteboard and break this down for you. All right, so now we're in front of the whiteboard. I'm going to break down the 2 different models that make this very easy to understand why my model is a little bit different than a traditional model. So right here we have the traditional work model. Starts off with you work, you make money. This model is called trading your time for money. Very simple. Everyone has been there in their life where you go and get a job, W-2, you work, you get your paycheck. That's that. Now my model. This is called the leveraging systems model. This is where it starts out with you, but instead of going directly into work, it goes into the system that you create. That system is what manages the people, who are the ones actually doing the work, who then work to make money, which then comes back to you. So there's a couple things that I'm adding in here. What's similar between the 2 models is both have you, both have work, both have money. But now we have this systems and people that is happening between those 2. And by leveraging those systems, and those systems are what is managing those people, you're able to pull yourself out of the day-to-day while still making money. I'm going to get more detail exactly how that process works. When I was at JP Morgan, I was doing the first model. Even if I'm making $500,000 a year, I was still trading time for money. But one of the benefits of working there was I got to watch the second model in action all the time, because all of the clients that I was working with that were worth hundreds of millions of dollars were using this model, not this model. So what I did is just took the same playbook that I was seeing happen right before my eyes, and I applied it to what I'm doing today with business acquisition. Notice these companies up on the board. These are companies that currently I have ownership in. And all these numbers next to it are the cash flow that's coming off of these companies. What do you notice about this list of companies? SaaS company, accounting, ATM, financial services, drilling company, a trucking company, and engineering. Maybe the first thing that you notice is that these are not sexy Silicon Valley startups. These are very much boring businesses. They're essential services that people use every single day, regardless of a recession or not. Each one has existing systems, they have existing customers, and most importantly, they have existing cash flow. I did not create any of these businesses from scratch. They were all doing fine on their own, and their owner wanted to get out of the business because they were retiring. I made sure I did the proper due diligence on all of these, making sure that they were cash flowing, making sure that they had good customers, they had great management teams, and I went forward and acquired them and added to my portfolio. All right, so right here you have the operational structure for how all the businesses that I just listed on and how they work. At the top, you have me. Spending, depending on the business, sometimes 0 hours a week, sometimes a couple hours a week. So I'm putting right here, most case scenario for any business I'm in is gonna be 2 to 3 hours a day. But most of the time, I'm not doing that. And some of the businesses I list, I have absolutely no role in any of the operations. Underneath me is the general manager that is managing that business. That general manager is there every day, 7 to 8 hours. They're the ones who are managing the operations manager. They're managing all the employees and the technicians. They're the person responsible for what's happening on the day-to-day of this business. Below them, as I mentioned, is the operations manager and then the employees and techs. This is kind of the pyramid in which management is operating. Now, we don't want to buy businesses where we are replacing this, because guess what? That's a full-time job. And most people who get into this acquisition space want to do what I've done, which is buy multiple businesses for the cash flow. They do not want to buy a job, because once you buy a job, you're not going to be able to go out and buy more businesses, because all of your time is sucked up right here on a daily basis. And then the rest of this should look very familiar. Every company you're working in has this structure. We just got to make sure that we are up top here and we only buy businesses that are allowing us to be here. Here's a snapshot of what I'm doing on a daily basis. Okay, so in the mornings, what am I really focusing on? I'm reviewing, I have dashboards for most of my businesses where I'm able to log in. I get to see what sales have happened the day before and all the other important metrics or KPIs that are telling of whether that business is doing well or not. So checking out those. I have a bunch of emails that I'm going through. A lot of them I'm CC'd on where I can just see what's going on in the business, but there's other things that are being asked directly of me that I need to delve into. And then if there's any calls in the morning, those are usually just getting updates from the day previous if I did not check in with those managers. What happens in the afternoon? Afternoon is typically going to be strategic work. This is where I am looking at the industries that I'm currently in, industries that I want to be in, figuring out strategic partnerships that I can do where I can connect another business or another partner to a business I already have to bring more revenue into it. This is where I'm really just trying to figure out how do I make this portfolio better performing and make my operations better. That is all happening with the strategic work. The financials, these are not happening on a daily basis, but every week I'm looking at those reports. I'm seeing if there's any issues in the business that I could catch before it gets to a point where it's actually now going to be painful. And then problem solve. There's always problems in any business. Even a very healthy, cash flowing business, been around forever, it's doing great. There's always issues every day that need to be solved. Now, most of those issues are not solved by me. They're solved by the people on the ground, the employees, the techs, the GMs, more importantly. But sometimes a problem will creep up past the GM because it involves spending money or investing in another piece of equipment. And then they want to go and ask the owner, which is myself or my partners or whoever else is going to be in that ownership group, whether or not they can do that. So what are the things that I don't do? Okay. Now this is important because this is what allows me to scale. One, I am not answering customer calls. The customers don't know who I am. They don't know that I am the owner for all intents and purposes. They just know the GM as the person who's running this place. They know the employees. They know the technicians. They do not know me. Very important for doing what we're doing. Next is employee issues. So your employee calls out sick and someone else needs to replace them on the calendar. That's not me. That's going to be the GM who's taking care of that issue. Anything else with employees, someone who is not performing well in the job, again, that's not me. That's going to be the GM who deals with that issue. Now, if an employee leaves and we need to replace them, yeah, sometimes I will help the GM, depending on the business, about finding someone to replace them. But for the most part, the GM is taking care of anything that happens in their purview, which is all the operations, all the employees and technicians underneath them. Dealing with vendors. Again, now because of what I've been doing the last few years, I do have some strategic relationships with certain vendors that do help some of my companies. But by and large, most of the day-to-day interaction between any one of the companies and any one of the products or things that they need, they're not coming through me. And again, that's something that the team is taking care of. Inventory or operational work. These are all things that I am not involved in. And it's purposeful. This is not an accident why I don't spend time doing these things. I only buy deals where I know from day one, I structure the deal in a certain way. I take on partners to make sure that I am not the person that is dealing with these things. Because again, I am optimizing for time and I can structure deals where I am not focusing on these, just focusing on these, and I know I can scale that. So now I'm going to show you my pyramid of systems. And we're going to break these down into 3 different categories: financial, operational, and communications. Now, over on the financial side, there's 4 things that typically are the backbone of my system. One is dashboards. I already mentioned this earlier in the video, but the dashboards are key because it just consolidates all the data for whatever business I'm looking at. All the important stuff that I need to see is put into one spot. So I can open up that on Google Sheets. I see exactly it being updated. I know how that business is doing on the key metrics that maintain the business health. Second is P&L, profit and loss. So this is something that's reviewed on a monthly basis. I see, okay, how do we do this month? It's an easy breakdown of where our expenses were, what our income looked like, and then showing at the bottom, hopefully, substantial amount of profit. Cash flow. This is kind of goes with the P&L. At the end of the P&L, you can see what the monthly cash flow has been. Cash flow is the lifeblood of every single business. If you see trends where your cash flow is declining, stop everything, figure out what's going on to get it to be very healthy again. This always needs to be the priority. Next is bookkeepers. Don't try to do this all by yourself, right? Even if you have a financial background or whatever the case may be, your time is better spent on other things. Make sure you're hiring professional bookkeepers that are doing at least monthly, but preferably weekly reconciliations. So you can see on a weekly basis what your numbers really look like inside the business. They're also going to keep you out of trouble when it comes to tax season. The second column here is operational, okay? The operational systems that you need to have. Number 1 is SOPs, standard operating procedures. Standard operating procedures means for every major thing inside your business, every major task that has to happen, everything that goes on in your business to generate income has an SOP. Now, what is the reason for this? The reason is that you are creating a legacy for everyone who steps into that role. So let's say you have a general manager who has a bunch of SOPs on how he does everything, and then he gets sick, God forbid, and he has to leave the business. Well, you need to hire a new general manager. That new general manager is going to walk in and they're going to see everything is mapped out on how the business runs successfully, and here are the systems that do it. You need SOPs and keeping them updated, preferably in writing as well as in video. Second, quality control, QT. This is where you're putting in metrics. What does success mean in this particular task? Your business needs 10 sales calls a day. Then in order to hit your profit targets, then 10 sales calls, that is the metric that needs to be hit. If you have 8 sales calls that day, well, then you're falling behind, right? You're 20% less than where you need to be. And so quality control is making sure that you're doing things properly, you're hitting the right metrics to make sure that your business is going to be in a very healthy position. And then training. Training is key. key. Training is not something that's done once and then the employee is good to go forever. For most roles, training is ongoing. And this is not just job-specific training, like task-specific training. This is also developing your people. The more that you spend the time to develop your employees or your general manager, the more that they're going to trust you and want to work with you, because you're not just caring about them making you money, but you're caring about them as a person and making sure they're well-rounded in how they're going about doing their job. Also spend a lot of time on training, task-specific training, as well as them as a whole person type training. Communications, this is key. We have weekly calls. Typically those are going to be with GMs. Monthly reviews are also going to be with GMs. And this is where you're not just diving into, okay, how many sales do we have? What does it look like on the ground? What are some issues with employees? This is really a deep dive. This is a 60 to 90 minute call where it's really diving into what is happening, what are the things that I need to get involved in, tell me where we're headed so that I can help you, right? Help me help you. And this is where it's very transparent. We're talking about things that are going really well, things that are not going well, and focusing our time on making sure we're making the business better. And then the emergency, right? Emergency text. So there's always a way in which any one of the GMs or operational partners that are in my business can reach out to me with something that's going on. There's certain things, as we mentioned before, that I'm working on a weekly basis, and there's things that I don't touch. But if some of the things that I don't touch get to a boiling point, 100% they need to reach out to me or any of the other partners in the deal to make sure that we're able to step in and help them to rectify whatever has been going wrong. Okay, so now let's talk about how to find the right people to be running the business. Because remember, in the way that our leverage system works, you have you, then you have the system, and then you have the people. Okay, so how do you find the right people that can use those systems to then work and make money? This is in order of preference, by the way. So number 1, partner; 2, seller; 3, promote; 4, hire. The number 1 preference in finding someone who's running the day-to-day is someone you partner with on the deal. Many of my students, when they go out there, they actually meet people within Acquisition ACE, our community. It might be a family member, it might be a friend, but someone they know that has operational experience in that particular industry and would be a great stakeholder to bring along with them in the deal so they can operate the business, right? Your incentives are aligned. They are going in this with you. And so they want this thing to succeed just as much as you do. They probably put some equity into the deal as well in terms of capital. That is the best role when there's not currently someone running the business. Like once the seller sells and there's no GM, this is the best option. Second best option is that the seller decides to stick around for at least a year or two and stays around as the GM. Now, why is that good? Because the seller knows what they're doing. They've been doing this for 10, 20, 30 years. The employees know them, the vendors know them, everyone knows them. And so the least amount of transition risk is the seller. Doesn't mean that it's always fine and dandy when the seller stays around. They might not like the way you do certain things, or they might clash with you on other decisions you're making with the company. Now, hopefully you build a good enough rapport with them to where you can work together as partners. The seller staying on really reduces the risk associated during that transition phase when you buy the company from them, and you don't have to teach them. They know exactly what they're doing. The next is promote. When you have a company and the seller's not sticking around, let's say they're gone, they leave after a couple months, you don't have a partner in the deal, the next best thing is to promote. Why? Because that person already knows the job. They already have the trust of their fellow employees. It shows that you're already supporting a culture of raising people up, because this person is going to be getting a higher salary. They're going to be getting, more benefits. It shows that if you work hard, you're going to get rewarded for it. So this is also going to be one of the least amount of transition risk, because it's someone who's already in the business, someone that already knows what's going on. Last is you go out and hire a third party. This is the most risky. Obviously, businesses do it every day and they hire great people, but this is someone who's coming in, does not have any background in that particular business, doesn't have the trust of anyone they're working with. Now they come in day one and now they got to manage this entire team that they just met. This is going to be the riskiest option. But if you have to do it, you have to do it. I've done it where I've gone out and found great people that I've hired. You can do it. It just takes time and it takes energy. So during the time where you're trying to find the right person, you might be the person who has to step in and manage that business until this person comes along. How do we structure the way we pay them? Because finding the right person is great, but you got to keep them. And the way to keep them is through paying them correctly. So it's going to be usually 3 different structures in how you're paying them. You got their base pay. Now, depending on the industry, depending on how long they've been in it, that could be anywhere from $50K all the way to $100K. Typically, it could be even more than that, but it all depends on the industry and the size of the business. So you have a base. Then these next 2 are critical, because these are the things that are really going to incentivize them to treat this business like their own. 1, you're going to have a very fat and happy bonus structure. If they hit certain metrics and KPIs in the business, then they're going to be able to reap the rewards, sometimes even doubling their base salary. So I like to make big, audacious goals and say, hey, if you reach this goal, I'm going to give you a fat bonus check that's going to be double what your current base salary is. That's a huge motivator for most people that have never been paid even when we're close to something like that. Now, obviously the math has to work. If they hit those big KPI goals, you'll have enough cash flow to where you'll be able to easily do what you say you're going to do when it comes to doubling their base pay. Next is equity. Now, equity is the most expensive thing thing here. It's the most expensive thing on the menu. You don't just give out equity willy-nilly. You give out equity to people that are going to be long-term partners. Equity is for someone that is critical. They're critical to the structure of this business. If this person leaves, it would kill the business. Done. They're super important, and you recognize that. And you want to incentivize them to stick around, because if they leave, it's going to screw you, and you don't want that to happen. Now, that equity is not just granted on day one. We're going to be doing something called a vesting structure. Typically, this is going to be over 2 to 4 years, meaning if they're going to get maybe 10% equity in the business, they will, and let's say you do a 5-year plan, every year they'll get 2% of equity. And so you want to put an incentive structure in front of them so that they work hard, treat the business like their own, and one day they're going to be an owner. And so those are the kind of the ways in which we structure, depending on who your employee is, who the person is in the business, how important they are to the business. This is going to dictate how you're going to go about compensating them. Since I only work a few hours a day, people always ask me, what are you doing with the rest of your time? This is the whole point. This is exactly why I do this. Basically, between 9 and 2 p.m., it's my time. I go to the gym, I do my Bible study, I read, I work on new deals, I create content for my students. Every day, honestly, can be different. From 2 to 8 p.m., it is now family time. I'm with my kids. I'm outside playing games, taking them to the park, going to the beach. We do dinner together. We're doing homework together. If they have a sport practice, I'm taking them to sport practice. At the end of the day, I'm just being present. Summers, we take a couple months and we go have fun. We go on an adventure. Now with 4 kids, it's not relaxing. So it's not a vacation in that matter, but it's an adventure, and we have fun and we make a lot of memories. Weekends, not checking emails. I'm not taking calls. I'm not missing any games. I'm never gonna miss a school play or parent-teacher conference. My kids are not gonna wonder, where's dad? Why is he always working? Why is he never at my events? This week, my kids are going back to school and both of them had orientation. I was able to go at 10 a.m. and spend an hour going into their classroom, seeing where their new desk is gonna be, seeing the excitement about the new year and how excited they are to get to meet their new teacher and meet their friends. I was there because I control my time. When my kids are sick, I'm home with them. No stress about PTO or taking time off. When we wanted to go take a random trip to the zoo, we go on a random trip to the zoo. There's no amount of money that you can make, and missing your kid's childhood is worth it. But the beautiful thing is, with this model that we talked about, you don't have to choose between one or the other. You can get financial security, and you also can get time freedom. That's the real wealth, not the $800,000 a year, though that's nice. It's the freedom to live life on your terms. It's never having to say, sorry guys, daddy has to work, I can't go there. It's being able to coach your kid's Little League team at 3 p.m. because you can. Leverage gives you your life back. If you want to learn exactly how to acquire businesses that can be systematized and run without you being in the day-to-day, I have something for you. I have a program called Acquisition ACE, where I don't just teach you how to buy a business, but specifically how to buy the right business that could give you leverage and freedom. We show you how to identify businesses with the right management structures, how to structure those deals, how to build systems, and most importantly, how to avoid buying yourself a full-time job. We've helped hundreds of students acquire their first business while keeping their full-time jobs and eventually transition to this leveraged model that I just showed you. If you want to learn more and see exactly how our students are doing this, check out the link in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.